Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to Author Talk with K.S. Jones and Susanna Lane. My name is Krista Sukup, and I am here from Blue Cottage Agency hosting this author event today. And we are delighted for you to join us. It'll be recorded and available on YouTube in a couple days. So thanks for joining us. I'm going to introduce our authors. Today we have uh, K.S. Jones, like I said, who is the author of Change of Fortune. In 1849, Gold Rush is no place for a refined young woman on her own. But Quinn plans to become a businesswoman, independent and capable of earning her own way. First, though, she must escape her wealthy but abusive father with her inherited dowry intact. With her hopes and dreams buried deep by secrets, she flees to California's gold country, a rugged man's land where only the strong survive. Battling blackmail, fraud, and deception, Quinn must face the most divisive lie of all, her own. K.S. Jones comes to us from the beautiful Texas Hill Country, where she writes historical fiction and romance. In 2014, Southern Writers Magazine awarded Karen their grand prize for Best Short Fiction of the Year, and soon after, her first two novels, Shadow of the Hawk, a young adult historical, and Black Lightning, a middle grade sci-fi fantasy, saw publication. Her work has garnered numerous awards, including the coveted Willa Literary Award from Women Writing the West. Her newest book, Change of Fortune, was released in February from Five Star Publishing. And within hours, it rose to number 30 on Amazon's top 100 in American historical romances. In less than 2 months, the hardback has already gone into its third printing. Her favorite bookstore is the Twig in San Antonio. So if you are in San Antonio, go in there and I'm sure you can find an autographed copy. Otherwise, you can visit her website at ksjones.com. Imperfect Promise by Susanna Lane. Cortland Enders has one chance to escape prison. Accept the deal brokered by the widow, Sienna Harris, and agree to distasteful business management disguised as a marriage. In a cunning maneuver, Sienna prompts Cort to attend a local dance, supposedly to find a companion for her waning days. Lark Garrin captivates him even though she is out of his reach. Lark is running from danger, and she believes Cort to be the marrying kind. Sparks fly when she discovered his offer isn't what she expects. The two are drawn closer, even as he is bound by his fidelity and she to her secrets. Violence from the past threatens to destroy everyone until Cort resurrects the gunslinging skills to save the woman he loves. The story is rich in character who brave the tumultuous plains. Susanna Lane is in southern New Jersey, without a mountaintop in sight. In fact, she spent many years cutting bait and dropping a line into the Delaware Bay from her father's fishing boat. Once retired from her teaching career, she moved with her husband to the Delmarva Peninsula. She's often been asked why she writes novels about the Wild West, coming from the East Coast. Her husband attended Colorado State College and fought wildfires in Wyoming during his youth. About 30 years ago, he led her on a vacation to the Rocky Mountains, and the rest, as they say, was history. 2 cattle drives and many ranch and riding trips later, she is a Westerner in spirit. She dabbled in writing all of her life, but it wasn't until the last 10 years that she became more entrenched in honing her craft. Susanna Lane began her career teaching materials, science, and chemistry. Oftentimes, she has been asked to explain the parallels between these 2 different careers. The best explanation lies in attention to details and drawing conclusion. That is writing. Until she published her first book, Imperfect Promise, in 2021, her greatest honor was born in her former career. She was part of a national program through Exxon to help encourage girls into careers in engineering and bolstering their confidence in the field. Ironically, as a member of both the Women Writing the West and Western Writers of America, she has found another path to spotlight women's fortitude as they overcame the odds while settling the West. An Imperfect Promise is certainly that kind of story. It has been selected as the Western Writers of America 2022 Spur Award winner for historical fiction romance, and the sequel to follow. No one could have prepared Susanna for the wildest ride of her life and grandest moments of her career. And with that, I am going to stop screen share and welcome everybody. It's great to see everybody's faces. And I'm coming to you from Minnesota. And like we said, KS Jones is coming to us from Texas. And Susanna Lane, it says Janice Herf on there. She does have a pen name. Her pen name is Susanna Lane. So if that's confusing you, it is Janice Huff up on in the box. That is, and she is coming to us from New Jersey. So today we're going to have Janice. They've read each other's books and they're anxious to jump into a discussion regarding each other's books. And I'm going to start with Janice, and she is going to be discussing K.S. Jones's book next. So take it away, Susanna.
Yeah. Oh, okay. Thank you. I have a number of questions. I so enjoyed the book. It's right here, and what started? I'm curious to know, Karen, what started you in writing historical novels, in particular Western historical novels?
Actually, it started back in my childhood. My parents were writers. They were also cotton farmers, raising a big family. Dad wrote Western stories for Western magazines and gold treasure hunting magazines. That's how he earned extra money for us to go on camping trips to the Southwest and see a lot of the historical sites. They loved books. They loved history. We had over 5,000 books in my home when I was a child, and they were probably the influence, them in the books. I just never imagined not writing from a very young age. And so that's how historical fiction and writing came into my life. It was really my parents and all of the books that they owned. It was wonderful.
That's great. Yeah. So I think we all have a story similar, when you get into history, but your description and portrayal of the town of Fortune is very intriguing. I was wondering, is there really a town of Fortune or a town similar to that prodded you to write about it? And also, what encouraged you to talk about or write about the gold rush era?
That's a great question, Janice, and I'm actually glad you brought it up, because that's I think it's an interesting topic. Since I was born and raised in California, Central California, on a cotton farm, we were just a few hours south of Sutter's Mill, which of course is where gold was first discovered in California in 1848. So I grew up hearing gold rush stories, and I loved them all. But most of the stories were about men. I wanted to learn more about the women of that time. And I do extensive research before I ever start writing a book. So the town name was a tough one, because when I write historical fiction, I truly like to keep it fiction. And so I don't want to name a real town. I didn't want to use Sutter's Mill or Coloma. I wanted to come up with my own town. And I was amazed to find that there is no town in California named Fortune. Here we are, the Golden State, the state where gold was discovered. Everybody made their fortunes there, but there was no town. There is no town named Fortune. There is one called Fortuna, which is close, and that's up in Humboldt County, Northern California, but there was no town named Fortune. And I thought, this is perfect, absolutely perfect. So I named the town Fortune. So it is a fictional name, a fictional town.
All right. Well, that last question kind of leads into this next one. When I first looked at the book and started reading, I was suspecting it was going to be about a woman panning for gold, or a bunch of men panning for gold. But
Right.
It really is a story about business, fledgling businesses in the town of Fortune. I'm wondering why you centered on that, or do you have a business background so this particular plot came naturally to you?
Actually, my background is so varied, it could make your head spin. I've done just about everything except retail work. I never actually worked in a grocery store, a clothing store, a department store. That's probably the only thing I haven't done in my life. I've been a telephone operator, a receptionist, been an airline reservationist, a real estate broker in several states, Texas escrow officer, done everything except retail. But the experience I did have was in restaurants. I managed small little eateries off and on throughout my lifetime. So I did have that experience, and I do love to cook. But the business part of the story that interested me so much is everyone really sees the gold rush as the way that people made their fortune. In reality, the ones who made the fortunes that lasted were the merchants. They were the businessmen, businesswomen. And they're the ones that made all the money during the gold rush. And so that really intrigued me. And so that's why I took that route.
All right. And it worked out very well, I would say. At any rate,
Thank you.
I love the title. And did you come up with the title as you were writing, or did you wait till the end? How did that work?
That's kind of actually a funny story. No, the book started out back in 2017, and I gave it a tentative title of One Truth, and wrote maybe the first third of the book and knew that the title just didn't quite fit. So as I wrote further, I changed the name to Underlying Truth. Get it? Underlying Truth. Yeah, I know, it's terribly corny. And I'm so glad that Change of Fortune, actually rescued me from that title. But I finally realized towards the end of the book that Quinn was, she had changed, the main character is named Quinn McCann. She had changed her own fortune, as well as changing the town of Fortune. And that's when it occurred to me that the correct title of the story was Change of Fortune, because it affected both the main character and the town that she ended up in. So Change of Fortune is how that happened.
Yeah, that's a great story. Yeah, very good. This is a burning question. And I don't want to give away any wows, but I do know your, cooking skills, and that, you have a very good background with that, and the history of that. I was wondering, what kind of research did you have to do for this book that does have so many cooking types of scenes?
You're right. I do love to cook. I love to cook all kinds of things. I always have. Pretty much all of my books have a little bit of cooking in them, at least a little bit. But there's some things that you just can't, you can't recreate when we're in 2022 and you're writing about 1849. So I have a collection of cookbooks, and probably 70 or 80. I think my oldest one is 1859, written by a Mrs. Cornelius. I actually make all of the recipes that I have in any of my books, and I try to make them authentically, the way the people in the books do. For instance, Bill Beaudry, who's the male lead in Change of Fortune, he cooks stew in a big vat outside over an open fire pit. So I did the same thing. I gave him the items, the vegetables and things, the meat that would be available in 1849, and I used the same ones. And so I try to recreate the recipe so that I can write it authentically. And there's some things like you and I have talked about before about an ingredient like saleratus. That is something that we can't buy today. But the only way to recreate it is basically to use wood or ash from a wood fire, like out of a fire pit, which then you're able to produce lye from it. And from that point, you have a couple more steps and you get potash. And from potash, you actually get a leavening agent for bread. Well, obviously, I'm not going to do that, and I'm not going to eat that stuff either. So I chose to use regular baking soda that you buy from the store. So there were some variations to the originality of the recipes, but I do try to cook them all and try to make them as authentically as I can while I'm writing the book. My poor husband, oh my goodness, you should see some of the things he's had to eat, but it has been fun.
Well, I'm glad you mentioned that name, saleratus. I'm sure I just butchered the word because I was afraid to mention that one because I knew I couldn't pronounce it. But thank you for clearing that up. At any rate, how long did it take you to write Change of Fortune?
I actually started writing it in 2017. Finished it at the end of 2019, and then I was ready. I actually submitted it to my chosen publisher, my first choice publisher. I submitted it to them, and then promptly the pandemic hit, and everybody closed their doors, closed down, and I felt like my poor book was in limbo for a year. And when the chaos finally started to clear, my book rose from the ashes and I received a contract. So it sat nowhere for a year. And then when I finally got the contract, it took another year for the publisher to get it out on the market. So I actually started it in 2017, finished it in 2019, but that's why it took so long to get it on the shelves, is because of the pandemic.
Oh, that's interesting. The length of time, and historicals tend to take a lot of the research time. But which part of the book, tailing on to that, which part of the book was the hardest for you to write?
Oh, well, let me change that question to which character was the hardest to write, because that was the hardest part of the book for me. And that was Quinn McCann's father, Hugh McCann. He was a very intense man, and as you know, writers, we live with our characters. They're alive to us. We talk to them, we listen to them, and he was very intense. And it was hard to write scenes with him because it was as if I was the target of his anger and his aggression. And so he was very difficult to write, but he was such a strong character. He was too real. But I've got to say, after I finished, I hope I have 100 more characters like him, because he was the most authentic, the most real, and the most memorable, I think, person of that book, which taught me a lot.
Yeah, I agree 100% with you on that. When you have a character like that, and so I probably know the answer to the question I'm about to ask, but what for you? From what you're saying, what comes first for you, the plot or the characters? Do you start sketching out the characters first or the plot first?
I actually think that the plot and the main character come at the same time for me. I mean, what's a storyline unless you know who it affects? I always see the main character when the storyline pops into my head. And that's what starts to develop. So I actually think the main character and the storyline come together at the very beginning for me. I don't have a cohesive thought if I don't have both.
And if you ever had a spin-off on this, which character would it be?
Yeah, I've been asked that a lot, which is a wonderful question. I have to say unequivocally, I knew all along. I knew from the moment that I met this character in the book. Some characters just surprise you, and this one wasn't planned. She just popped up and came into the book, and I loved her from the first minute. And so, if I were to write a sequel or another story, I think that Clive and Libby would have to be the main characters. I loved Libby the first time she was kicked off her father's wagon, as a pregnant young lady. She just stole my heart. And so I think I would go with Libby and Clive as the next book.
And lastly, what's your opinion as to what makes a good story?
Oh, the characters. A good story has unforgettable characters. It's always about the people.
Mm-hmm. I agree. Yeah. So that's all of my topics and questions, but I have to say the book is marvelous. And I know I've said it before, and I'm trying to think of another word, like fabulous, wonderful book, well worth reading, and it's not just fiction. You can learn so much from it as well. And thank you again for writing it and for having so many good things in that book that we can all enjoy.
Well, thank you. Your questions were great. Those were fun to answer. So thank you for reading the book, and thank you for us being here today. I really enjoyed every question. So thank you. I do have questions for you. First of all, we learned not too long ago that your book, Imperfect Promise, won the Spur Award for 2022. I am just so thrilled for you. I mean, Imperfect Promise is the perfect book for the 2022 Spur Award. So first of all, congratulations. That is a huge feat to accomplish, especially for your debut novel. This is the first novel you wrote, and you won the biggest award. That's fantastic.
Now I'm blushing.
Really great, really great. Okay, so first question I have for you, this is something that I've wanted to ask for a while. Obviously, I know your real name, Janice. Mm-hmm. I'm curious as to how you came up with your pen name of Susanna Lane and why you chose to do that.
Well, that's a complex answer, a complex question. The reason, well, first of all, my real name, Herf, my legal name, is well known in Southern New Jersey. It's on every other road sign, believe it or not. My husband's family came from the 1600s over there. But Herf is one syllable, but you would think that would be pretty easy for people to remember. But in the audible, it isn't. It becomes hearse, half, huff. People who know me sometimes just call me half. They forget the R. So I thought I need to come up with a name that will be a little catchy if I'm going to be an author. So I'm all about genealogy as well. And my great grandmother was born Susanna Lane in 1820 on the frontier of Virginia. The fact is, I don't know too much about her, except that she had to have been a lady of fortitude and stamina to survive at that time. So I thought, let me use that name. Also, it, as silly as this may sound, when I first started writing, because this was my debut novel, I thought, I'm a private person. I always wanted to stay private. Well, little did I know that that was just not possible as an author. And Krista and you have sort of gotten that home to me. No, you can't be both. So I'm finding out that it really didn't matter except for the pronunciation of the name. So, but yeah.
Well, I think Susanna Lane is a wonderful name for a Western, on a Western book. It looks great on the cover. It's easy to remember. I love it. I think that was a wonderful choice.
Thank you.
I also want to say that your main character in Imperfect Promise, lovely woman named Lark Garrin. I love her name too. I think that is such a creative name. It opens with her trying to hide her recently scarred face as she boards a train. I loved it when her cook Bailey hands her salve and says, "It'll help heal that scar. The healing inside depends on you." That was a great start to a story. Really just an amazing line. So when you first started to write Lark's story, what was your original opening? Our lines now usually end up somewhere else in the book. But I'm wondering if the first line in your book, was that your original, or did you come up with it later?
It was actually my original. Lark was my first sketch or character, and I intended to have a character who was scarred inside and out. And having sketched her into my outline, I just realized I had to have even as strong as she was, she needed someone to really bail her out and help her. And Cort was just the other main character, was just the person to do that. And so that's really the story there. I'm just very interested in the scarred characters and those that are flawed. So,
do you have a favorite scene in the book? One that like flashes through your mind when somebody asks you about your book?
Yep, I do. I really like when Cort and Lark first meet, or are first encounter each other in front of Gast's Okalala house, the hotel there. And I really like that scene. I
like that scene too.
And I love another character. He's actually a minor character, but he plays some major roles in the plot and gluing the plots together, and that's Zeke. And I really like the confrontation between Cort and Zeke at one point. So yeah, and he's so wizened and prophetic that he sort of balances out the emotions.
Yes. Well, did you have did you enjoy writing one character more than another, or do you have a favorite scene that you enjoyed writing? I'm all about characters, so that's the first thing that comes to mind. Is I'm wondering if it was a character for you.
Yeah, I really enjoy writing about Lark and making her as strong as possible and supportive of the whole situation that she's thrown in. I liked Sienna in some ways, writing about her, because in some ways she was definitely not likable, but in other ways you had to like her for her strength and what she was going through as well, and her determination to keep a ranch alive. So I enjoyed those two characters, and as I mentioned before, Cort was very important in all of this. He was flawed to the core, but he really pulled up with that ranch. So yeah.
Do you know the title of your books before you start writing them?
Oh, titles are the hardest thing for me. As I'm pretty much through the book before I have a firm title. I jot them down. I jot this one down, that one down. I cross it out, and I finally came up with that toward the end when I realized, well, there's a lot of imperfect people in the story, and there were promises made here. So imperfect promise is what I came up with. But yeah, I had other names that just didn't work, and but yeah, it's hard for me.
Well, that is a perfect title. You're exactly right. That is the title of this story. So you did great. If you don't mind me asking, what is your writing process like?
Well, interestingly, I'm like you, I think. Characters to me are the most characterization, dialogue, which sort of is the characterization as well. Very important. And if my characters don't come alive and stand off that page, I didn't do my job. So I would say my writing process is, first, I have to have characters in mind, at least the two main characters. And I outline. Those are my three things I always do. And it's crazy and it sounds crazy. But if my characters change in the plot or things change with the plot, I'll go back and fix my outline. So they tell me, they dictate where I'm going. So I develop characters. I have a sketch in my mind of characters, and I have the general idea of the story. But they really seem to, the characters really drive all that.
That is very interesting. Do you follow a strict work schedule, or do you write, whenever the creativity hits you?
Well, I feel like writing is sort of like, if you don't do a little exercise once in a while, you're going to lose your muscle strength. So I do write every day, and I tell myself, even if I only have 10 minutes, I'm going to sit down. The problem is, when I sit down, 10 minutes becomes an hour becomes 2 hours. And generally, when I reach 3 to 4 hours, I'm pretty saturated and I have to stop. But that's about my schedule. And I usually get started by noontime, after I've sorted through all the dishes and things like that in the morning. So, but that's pretty much my schedule every day.
Okay, so I'm privy to, maybe a little bit of inside information. And I know that you have a sequel coming out to Imperfect Promise. Can you share a little bit of that with us?
I can, a little bit. Yeah, it's in now there's one. I have a title for it. It's Enduring Promise. And again, it offers a chance for some resolution. I like to bury a mystery in my books, and so there is some loose ends tied up in the second book, and there are more characters. There are some additional new characters that are introduced that are really important to the family as a whole. And so, once again, they're coming. The characters are going to be in their with their own baggage. They're bringing their own issues and problems. So, and and still in the same area.
Well, other than your promise books, do you have an as yet unwritten story in your mind that you just can't shake, that you know one of these days you want to write? And if so, I'm curious as to whether that would be a Western or what it might be.
Yes, I do. It's pretty muddy in my mind right now, but I'm already forming a character. One of the main characters. I figured out his name. I probably can disclose Hayes Ellis is what his name will be, but the first scene is going to be in a bank with an Ansonia clock on the wall, and in a town out west, and around the date 1880. So yeah, I have that much of the sketch in my mind, but I want it to begin in a bank. So of course I'm researching banks now. And the answer.
Okay, and my last question for you, and I can't wait to hear your answer. You're just so inspiring on so many things. If you could go back in time, what advice would you give to yourself about this writing journey?
Oh goodness, I've learned an awful lot, and a lot of it from you, Karen, from Krista, from Deborah, all my author friends. But I learned that, you know, there's going to be ups and downs, and there's no getting around it. And no matter whether you're an experienced writer or you're not, you know, you've just begun, there's a learning curve. And I think we all learn something every day. Doesn't matter if you're a, you know, Nobel Prize winner or what, you learn something every single day. And I've said to some of my colleagues that don't rely on a prescription. Prescriptions don't work for all patients. And if you are intent on writing, write what you like to write, do what you like to do, and don't forget don't be afraid to step away from the prescription and into your own to-do list and do what you like to do.
That's great advice. Well, thank you, Janice. I really enjoyed Imperfect Promise. I cannot wait for Enduring Promise. And hopefully Enduring Promise will also win you a Spur Award. Are you just over the moon on the Spur Award? You must be just thrilled.
I am. And when I first heard about it, I was with my husband for his heart doctor appointment where they were checking his heart, and we both had masks on. And when I got the call, I'd forgotten to turn the ringer off, and I thought, oh, I forgot again. And I answered the phone and I said, Wyoming. Now, who would be calling me from Wyoming? And I answered it with my mask on, and I'm sure I was muffled, not even thinking. I was so stunned to take the mask down, but my eyes were so big. I couldn't wait for the doctor to leave the room so I could go out in the parking lot and whoop, you know. So yeah. So that was quite
That's good. Well, congratulations again.
Yes,
well,
congrats.
I've always loved Wyoming, but now I love it even more.
Yeah. Yes, congratulations on that. And thank you, both of you, for the great questions. And I always just enjoy the questions and perspectives between two authors. We do have some questions from people that are participating today. And the first one is, and this is always a question of mine too, and it's from Sue Reddy. Can each of you address the editing process as you developed your manuscript? Was it more time consuming than you anticipated? Were there discouraging elements, encouraging moments to keep writing process moving along? And then she said, loved your informative discussion. Thanks. So could you each kind of
Oh,
talk a little bit about the editing process?
and first of all, thank you for the question, Sue. Mine is probably the opposite of a lot of people's. I hate the first draft. The first draft is so hard for me. But once I get the first draft finished, man, I can edit forever. I love editing, love revising. It is just like a true joy to me. So that's actually my favorite part. I really enjoy that. And I am traditionally published. So I write and revise and edit myself along with a few critique partners that are invaluable to me. And then once it's in place, I send it to the publisher. And then of course the publisher has their editors that work with me until we get a finished product. But when I send one in, I have had the best time editing it up to that point. So that's the part I love.
Is it hard for you to know when you're done? Is it hard for you to stop that process? Because I know some people, it's like they just keep going and going, and they eventually just have to be like, have to stop and pass it on to the next person. Is that transition hard for you?
That's a great question too. For me, it's not. It used to be. The first few books that I wrote, it absolutely was difficult. I was just, as a critique partner of mine said just recently, last night, I think, you know, when you start pushing around words, you need to stop. I don't, the more books you write, the less often you do that, I think. That's true for me anyway.
Yeah. I mean, for me, I took a different road. I'm on a different kind of lane than Karen is, because this was my first effort, my first book. And editing, I did edit, edited, and I was published with a traditional 5-star publishing. And they took over the main editing of it. My second book, Enduring, I said, this time I'm editing 7 times, which I've gone through and through it, you know, and now they have it, it's in their lap. So I'll be interested to see what happens, but I'm learning that, yeah, editing is really important. It isn't my favorite thing. And for the same reason, I can go through and edit it 20 times. And I'm going to find some sentence, some word that I want to change. And pretty soon you just realize you have to stop somewhere or it won't be the same book. It'll be a different story. So, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you both for sharing that. We have another question, and please, if anybody has any questions they want to throw in the chat, we're happy to ask those on your behalf. In writing historical fiction, we're often inspired by real events, no matter how small, that seem to fit in our own stories. How close to the real event can we tread when including those stories in our own work? That's a great question for some of the writers in our group joining us today.
Well, for me, I created all the characters and their stories, but that's not to say that real people didn't inspire them. For instance, I have a short story that placed second in the Laura Awards for Women Writing the West recently. And that character and that story were completely inspired by a true story in the Old West of a woman who became a card dealer, worked in a saloon. It's not the life she wanted. She hid her personal life so that no one would know that the person who lived the personal life and the card dealer were the same woman. So her story was certainly inspired by an original, but then I take that and keep all the historical facts accurate, but I create a different story for my character. Very inspirational to me, real life is.
Yeah, I mean, I would have to agree. I think a lot of my inspiration just comes from the experiences I've had traveling in so many remote places out west. And I mean, I'm a ghost town person, and you'll catch me looking at stoves and old wood stoves to find out the manufacturing name and that sort of thing. But here's the irony. A lot of times I'll wind up in a gift shop, and the gift shop owners will inevitably come out. They're so glad to have company that they'll fill you in with a lot of the stories about the old town and who lived there. And so I get a little inspiration from just going into a gift shop where I might be the only person browsing at the books, and they come over and they give me a lot more information than I will get from the book. So.
That is great. I love that. My mom needs to write books. I think she's on today, and she's always visiting and learning about people when she's traveling in the stories. She's not a writer, but she's definitely a fan and a reader of this genre and of your books. Question from Adam. He has a question for both of you. How much, if at all, does dreaming affect your ideas or characters or story development? I love that question.
That is a great question. Dreaming is when a lot of my answers are given to me. I can't say that I am actually inspired by a thought in a dream, but I sure get answers. I can be struggling with something in my story. I don't understand it. I don't even know why I'm writing on the path that I'm writing. I know that there's a reason why I'm there. I don't know what it is. But when I fall asleep, when I dream, that answer will come to me. So it's actually extremely important to me.
Yeah, I agree. I think the same thing happens to me. It's I could wake up in the middle of the night and say, oh, I just don't feel right about that paragraph or what that person said when I wrote yesterday. And I'll get up and go into my office and start making notes and change that particular paragraph. So it comes to me at strange, odd moments, mostly, at night when I'm asleep. I'll wake up. And so, yeah, in a dream or whatever it is, but it certainly is something that might have been niggling at the back of my brain. So
I hear that a lot from various authors on the role of dreams in their writing and their books, and it's so fascinating. One author that was on for a little bit and she had another meeting to go to, Candace Seymour, she wrote a trilogy, and I remember her calling me one morning and she said, oh, she goes, I dreamt last night and and there's a fourth book. I was like, wow. So cool how that creative process happens in our brains and our creativity. It's fascinating. We have another question here. To both authors, how important are joining writing groups?
Well, writing groups and writing organizations, critique groups. I think that it depends on what stage you're in your writing. Writing organizations are, I think, vital from beginning to end. Women Writing the West, Western Writers of America, Women Fiction Writers Association. They're huge, and every writer should belong to at least one or two groups. Very valuable information and camaraderie comes from them. Critique groups, I think, are better in the first stages of writing. I don't necessarily think that they're needed after you've written 3, 4, 5 books. But writing partners are important. In other words, someone you can bounce ideas off of, not necessarily that's going to read every page you wrote and help you proceed to the next one, but just to bounce ideas off of and to talk about the writing process itself is very important.
I agree 100%. There's a two-part story on that one. Organizations are essential, I think, for authors to belong to, for camaraderie, but also to find out more about what you can do to improve. Also, I will mention two things. When I first decided I was going to write these Westerns, and I thought, gee, I didn't know anything about these organizations. So just by chance, I looked up some names of organizations, and I saw a name, Sherry Monahan, and I emailed her. She directed me to the WWW and then to the WWA. And she, by the way, writes some cookbooks about the West and so forth. So it was wonderful. But I've always told the story, and even to Karen, she's heard this one before. My first conference was in San Antonio with the WWW. And I'm still just astounded, grateful. I can't tell you how grateful. The day that I stepped off that elevator and met Karen, because there she was, me with my cane, because I was about to have a knee surgery. And she helped me calm down before I pitched a book. And she showed, I just felt so warm and welcome. And she was such a welcoming person. And I knew then, I had hit the right organization, and it's just one of the many reasons it's important to belong to such an organization. So thank you, Karen.
Yeah, I echo what both of you say regarding if you are a writer, that connecting with other writers is your best tool you will ever have. And it's really important. Great groups out there in all sorts of genres. We have another question too from Deborah. Do either of you use beta readers?
I have in the past. Very valuable if you can find the right ones. Beta readers, it's difficult to find the right ones. They have to understand your genre. They have to actually enjoy reading your genre. They can't just be great readers, but that is important too. But they have to understand the structure of a story, everything, the vernacular used depending on the genre you're writing. So they have to be pretty darn smart beta readers, familiar with the type of books that I write before we're going to do each other any good. So I have some really good ones. I'm so fortunate, but like Janice was saying, it's all in contacts that you make at writing conferences, really, is where you find the best beta readers, in my opinion. There are other writers who write the same thing you do. They're serious writers, and they understand what it's all about. So yes, I will use a beta reader if I have the right ones.
Yes, I have used the beta reader. And again, the organization, belonging to these organizations has really made the difference in that, so that you're in the right genre.
I love that both of you say, to just keep learning, and that whatever level you are at as a writer, to always just work on becoming better at your craft, and that knowing that your best work is always in front of you. And I love the whole scientific approach, Janice, to your how you outline, you don't hear that much. You do not hear that much. And so you with the scientific background, yeah, it just makes sense that you would be systematic about how you are, working through your plot developments and character developments. So I thought that was pretty cool. And so what's up next? Karen, or KS, what are you working on next before we close this out? I'm curious.
Actually, I just signed a new publishing deal. It's for 4 books, 4-book deal with Wolfpack Publishing. One will be another historical romance, and then the next 3 will be contemporary Western romances. So I'm kind of under the gun to produce some books, and I'm excited. I'm very excited about it. Wolfpack is a fabulous publisher, and I just can't wait to see if I can actually pull this off and write 4 books that fast.
Yes, they want them fast, so you gotta be ready to write. Deborah said, women writing the West welcome not only women writers, but also men who desire to write about the West, a great welcoming group of writers. Yes, men are also very much a part of women writing the West. And if anybody has any last questions, otherwise I want to just thank sincerely Karen and Janice for joining us today, sharing your insight and your work and your inspiring stories. And just congratulations on all you have accomplished. My personal perspective is that the number one thing a person needs if they want to be an author is perseverance. So don't stop, keep writing, keep reading if you're just readers out there. And all of that is so important to our world to continue to learn and grow and connected to each other. So thanks everybody for joining us today, and I hope you have a wonderful week. And we have upcoming author talks, so stay tuned for more of that. And with that, I'll say goodbye, and I'm going to stop recording.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.